Amazing blind date exposes lonely millionaire CEO how a single mom's touching discovery transforms. Claire's fingers twitched as she clutched the worn ticket stubs poking from her wallet. The weight of another sleepless week pressed heavily on her chest. She had just finished a 12-hour shift at the hospital, rushing to the diner for a double shift that felt like a cruel joke on her exhausted self. Her friend had been relentless. "Just one night! You deserve a break!" Yet Claire could feel the doubt surfacing, mixing with the fatigue. A blind date with some tech millionaire, as if a world-class suit could possibly understand the life of her, a single mother, fighting for a better life. Would this night be another reminder of how inaccessible happiness felt? The cramped cafe buzzed with the chatter of people connected to life and love, while she felt like an outsider peering through a glass wall. Jake arrived, a tall figure eclipsing the light, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit. He glanced around, an uneasy look lurking behind his sharp features. As they exchanged awkward pleasantries, Claire's mind raced. Could she channel the strength needed to navigate this? Two worlds colliding, one of cozy kitchens and PTA meetings, the other of boardrooms and luxury penthouses. The hunger in Claire's heart was palpable. Listening to him talk about algorithms and innovations made her feel small, but she pushed those feelings aside, drawing strength from her passion for life. "My daughter, she wants to be a veterinarian," she found herself revealing, the pride pouring out effortlessly. In that moment, Jake's polished exterior faltered. The conversation flowed, revealing snippets of his life wealth that felt hollow, toys for success but no warmth. She could sense him grappling with whether to hold on or let go of the persona he had crafted. Suddenly, an unease gripped Claire's heart as she recalled the news. His company was behind the redeveloping of the community park she and Lily cherished. Memories flooded her mind: Lily's laughter, summer picnics, the peace that enveloped them beneath the sprawling oak trees. The park had been a sanctuary. She locked eyes with Jake, a storm building within her. "You're involved in that project, aren't you? The one that threatens the park?" The words slipped out, sharp and cutting. Jake's brow furrowed, fleetingly defensive. "It's just business, Claire," he replied, but she detected a flicker of uncertainty. Business at what cost? She felt the tension climbing as she confronted him, her tone steady though inside. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of anguish and determination. Could he not see the weight of his actions? The stories that would vanish with the trees? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Pressing on, Claire's breathing grew irregular. "It's not just a park, Jake. It's a place of memories and joy. For my daughter and every family that loves it. It's everything to us." Her words lingered, heavy in the air, and Claire's heart raced at the realization of what was at stake. Would her voice be just another echo lost against corporate machinery? She couldn't grapple with the frustration of feeling so powerless as their lives, so intertwined, suddenly felt miles apart. Jake seemed to shift, the mirror between them fogged with uncertainty. Would he understand? Or would business as usual win, leaving her and Lily to fight alone against the darkness creeping ever closer? The night grew colder, shadows lengthening around them, and Claire stood at the precipice of a moral cliff, her spirit ignited, but her path ahead uncertain. Could she protect what she loved, and would Jake in the end choose the cost of his success over the warmth of community? A heavy silence enveloped the table, leaving Claire's heart pounding. The glimmer of trust she had dared to see in Jake's eyes flickered like a candle in the wind. How could he dismiss the emotional stakes riding on this project? The park was not just an aesthetic. It was a lifeline for her and countless others, a tapestry woven from shared moments of happiness. As she recovered from the raw intensity of her confrontation, the doubt clawed at her. What if her words fell on deaf ears? Jake shifted uncomfortably in his seat, the polished veneer of his demeanor cracking. "I didn't realize it was so significant to you," he replied, his voice quieter, the bravado fading. At that moment, Claire felt the weight of a rare opportunity rippling through the air between them. Maybe, just maybe, she could reach him. Motivation surged within her. This was no ordinary blind date. This was a chance to unveil a shared humanity, the heart behind the business suit. "Look, I understand you're driven by numbers and metrics, but the community isn't just a project to fill a quota," Claire pressed on, her voice steadier than she felt. Each word was an arrow aimed at confusion, hoping to pierce through his corporate armor. "It's about people, memories, futures. My daughter deserves a safe place to play and dream, not another development wiped clean like it never mattered." Jake's expression was unreadable, and Claire's anxiety mingled with a burgeoning hope. "You're right." He hesitated, vulnerability edging his features. "I've spent so much time focused on the bottom line that I've lost sight of the real impact." The admission shocked Claire. Inside, she felt a surge of validation. She had pierced the isolating bubble of his life for just a moment. But the lingering question remained: how far could this breakthrough extend? "Understanding is the first step," she said softly, the flicker of optimism igniting her words. "You have the ability to change this, to consider perspectives beyond profit margins." Her gaze locked onto his, radiating earnestness. The kinetic energy of the moment pulsed around them. Claire could feel the possibility of collaboration crackling to life. What if they could craft a solution together, striking a balance between progress and preservation? Jake returned her gaze, a shift occurring within him. The shadows looming in her mind began to recede, as she sensed his resolve building. "Can you help me see what I'm missing? I've always been good at executing plans, but I fear I'm not good at hearing the people affected by those plans." His vulnerability sparked a flicker of understanding, awakening Claire to the idea that perhaps his intentions were not as devoid of empathy as she had initially feared. Inclusion, once a concept she had felt distant from, now seemed within reach. "Let us work on this together," Claire offered, emboldened. "Let us find a way to make the park part of the development, preserve its spirit, while bringing something new to the community." The idea fell from her lips like a secret made public, laden with potential. Jake leaned back, contemplating, his internal conflict visibly brewing. It would mean a shift in how the project is executed, but he began, then faltered, a frown etched on his brow, as if grappling with breaking the mold he had long known. "Isn't it time to redefine success?" she pressed, heat rising in her chest. The moment felt monumental, a collective pivot towards growth. Would he take the leap? As the silence stretched between them, Claire held her breath, a sense of foreboding creeping back in. Would he concede to the urgency of embracing change, or would he retreat to the shelter of his former narrative? The night, once chilling with uncertainty, now bristled with uncharted potential. She was ready to challenge everything she had believed so far, but the risk was daunting. Standing on the precipice of transformation, Claire's heart thrummed with the unknown. They could either bridge the vast gap separating their worlds, or become bitter reminders of dreams deferred. A decision loomed, and whatever direction it took would redefine their trajectories, not just for each other, but for the countless lives impacted by choice. But what remained to be seen was whether Jake would resist the familiar or allow his vision to adapt to something greater. The tension hung like a tightrope between them, each moment stretching out as Jake wrestled with his thoughts. Claire could see the wheels turning in his mind. She sensed the shift in their dynamic, he was no longer just a corporate suit aiming for the bottom line. He was a man at a crossroads. This connection was not born out of romantic intrigue, but rather a mutual drive for betterment that seemed to ignite something deep within her. "Okay," Jake finally spoke, his voice coming steadier now. "Let us say we entertain this thought. What exactly would that look like? How do we keep the integrity of the park while still moving forward?" His willingness to engage fueled Claire's determination. The gears of her mind began spinning rapidly, ideas colliding, overlapping, and coming to life. She leaned in closer, excitement bubbling within her. "We could organize community meetings, bring in local voices, perhaps gather testimonials, even work with the community on designs. Show that their input truly matters." The concept flowed naturally from her, supported by the fervor in her voice. Claire envisioned art installations reflecting the neighborhood's culture, play areas that harness local artistry, spaces not just for leisure but for connection and empowerment. She felt a current of hope rising as she spoke, bolstered by Jake's attentive nods. Gathering real input could shift everything, he mused, a glimmer of admiration flickering in his eyes, as he started jotting down her ideas. For the first time, Claire felt she was not just speaking to Jake the executive, but engaging with Jake the human being, the one who could drive change. But how do we convince those at the top that people's voices matter? These meetings won't be viewable through spreadsheets, he countered thoughtfully. A pang of recognition hit Claire. She had often grappled with this question, echoing in her own dilapidated surroundings. Her room felt small, her bank account smaller still, yet the ambitions within her knew no bounds. "We have to demonstrate the value in the intangible," she said, voice firm. "We can draft proposals that quantify community sentiment. Case studies showing how inclusive design increases engagement can speak to the numbers-minded. Connect their profit-driven motives to something genuine and holistic." Jake visibly considered her insights. He was absorbing the depth beyond the metrics. It pleased Claire to see wheels turning in a new direction, yet uncertainty flickered at the edges of her confidence. This path was untested. "But can you see yourself fighting that uphill battle?" she asked, testing her own resolve against the fear of failing to rally Jake's commitment or running headfirst into corporate walls. "Part of me is afraid I'll return to the status quo," he admitted, glancing down at his notepad. "That maybe I'm too entrenched in this way of thinking to change." "Then we'll fight together," she asserted, instinctively reaching for his hand across the table. "If I can shift your perspective, if I can inspire you to lead with heart, what is stopping us?" Their hands connected for a brief moment, a spark igniting. She felt his pulse quicken under her touch. It wasn't just a gesture. It was a partnership forming, as if they were holding the threads of transformation. But doubt rattled through her mind. Would he truly stand with her, or would he sink back into the weight of complacency? They were teetering on the brink of innovation, yet the shadows of past decisions loomed menacingly. A sudden resolve surged through Claire. This was not just about the park. This was a personal journey for her, a battle against being seen as merely a single mother struggling for her child's future. If they were to take this leap, she had to trust that she had the strength to see it through, regardless of the outcome. As Claire closed her eyes briefly, breathing in the possibility of change, she committed herself to this venture wholeheartedly. Her path ahead was laden with risks, but in that moment, there was a profound clarity. "Let us set up those meetings," Jake finally declared, his voice steady, the flicker of excitement returning. "Let us start with the people who matter." Anticipation surged in Claire's chest. They had made the commitment to weave their destinies together, but there remained one vital question. Could she rely on Jake to maintain this momentum when the tides of corporate interests inevitably sought to clash against their dreams? The night as promised hung tantalizingly near, by a defining moment for both of them, begging the question of whether they could truly transform that initial spark into a roaring flame of change. The following morning, Claire awoke with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The sunlight streamed through her modest curtains, illuminating a space cluttered with dreams yet to be realized. Today marked the beginning of their initiative, a chance to reshape her community's narrative. As she prepared her son's breakfast, the gravity of her commitment settled in. It was more than just the park. It was about shifting paradigms, about redefining her own place in a world that often sought to minimize her voice. Jake had called her late last night with a plan. He had reached out to his colleagues and secured a conference room for their first meeting with local residents. She could sense the urgency in his voice, an eagerness to transcend his usual corporate environment and step into a realm that felt unfamiliar yet compelling. As she gathered her notes, Claire wondered if they could indeed bridge the gap between corporate priorities and community desires. Would Jake's corporate instincts guide them toward meaningful solutions, or would they be tempted to revert to business as usual? That question nagged at her as she finished her morning routine, and a sense of uncertainty crept in. Once they arrived at the conference room, Claire observed the stark contrast of polished furniture against the weary faces of the residents gathered before them. Each individual brought stories filled with frustration and hope, tales of a park neglected and visions for a space that could embody their community's identity. Jake stood at the front, flipping through a PowerPoint presentation that showcased data supporting their ideas. Claire watched as he confidently outlined their plans. Still, she sensed a pivotal moment was approaching. As Jake spoke about profit projections linked to community engagement rates, Claire realized the connection was wooden, analytical, but devoid of emotional resonance. Time slowed as she considered her next move. Should she interject? Would disrupting the flow send Jake into a defensive retreat? Doubt wrestled with her courage, but she could feel the collective energy of the room urging her on. With a steadying breath, Claire stepped forward. "Jake," she began, her voice measured yet firm. "While these metrics matter, it's essential we don't lose sight of the individuality of our residents. We can't present them merely as numbers. Their experiences are the raw materials from which we'll forge this project." A tension coursed through the room. Jake's brow furrowed, but Claire pressed on, undeterred. "Let us ask them, what do they envision? What does this park mean to them?" The shift was palpable. The moment she finished speaking, a murmur of agreement rippled through the residents. An elderly woman raised her hand, her voice trembling yet assertive. "I want a garden where children can learn to grow their food." In that instant, Claire felt a spark of empowerment that her voice carried weight. She turned to Jake, whose gaze met hers, an unspoken understanding passing between them. It was as if he recognized the importance of grounding their vision in lived experience rather than abstract figures. The room transformed. Each resident began to unveil their hopes: spaces for gatherings, paths for biking, and quiet corners for reflection. The discussion morphed into a vibrant tapestry woven from their contributions. Claire took notes, absorbing every detail. With each new idea, the initial tension began to dissipate. After the meeting, as they stepped outside, Jake turned to her, his expression a mix of admiration and uncertainty. "You have a way of pulling out what is vital," he admitted. "But how do we preserve this momentum?" Claire felt a rush of clarity. She had to balance guiding Jake while fortifying her own confidence. "It's about maintaining open lines of communication," she suggested. "We have to continuously engage with them, show that we're listening." Yet doubt lingered in Jake's eyes, a reflection of an internal struggle. Claire realized they were both navigating uncharted waters, her navigating the corporate dynamics of the project, and he wrestling with his commitment to this evolving vision. Just as she felt a sense of triumph wash over her, a familiar tension resumed. What if their elevated discussions faced backlash once the plans reached the higher corporate levels? Would Jake defend their newfound vision, or would he relegate the community as desires to the background for a neater bottom line? As they walked back, The enormity of what lay ahead settled heavily on her shoulders. Claire understood that her commitment would require every ounce of resilience she could muster. She would not only advocate for her community, but would have to navigate the shifting loyalties of the corporate world alongside Jake. The towering presence of the skyscrapers loomed ahead, a reminder of where ambition met reality. Would they emerge victorious or succumb to the inevitable pull of corporate inertia? As her heart raced with anticipation, Claire recognized that their paths were irrevocably intertwined. Tomorrow's meeting with corporate stakeholders would unfold a deeper challenge, a test of their commitment. Would Jake hold firm in the face of corporate pressure? Would they stand united, or would the dream flicker and fade like so many before? The stakes were high, and the journey had only just begun. The next day, Claire stood before the expansive glass windows of the conference room, her reflection merging with the cityscape outside. The gleaming towers represented potential and ambition, but also the unyielding force of corporate expectations. As she glanced at her notes, her heart raced with a mix of anticipation and dread. Today, they would face the corporate stakeholders whose decisions could make or break their vision for the community park. Jake arrived moments later, his posture tense, betraying the same apprehension she felt. He checked his watch, his expression oscillating between determination and uncertainty. "Are you ready?" he asked, though his tone suggested he was pondering his own fortitude more than checking on hers. With conviction, Claire replied, "I'm ready if you are. Remember, our goal isn't just to sell numbers. It's to share a story." She could tell her words resonated. The flicker of understanding in his eyes encouraged her, yet she also sensed his battle with the weight of the shareholders' interests pressing down on him. Once they settled into the meeting, Claire felt the tension escalate further. The stakeholders were a sea of stern faces, immersed in their digital devices, poised to dissect every proposal through the lens of profitability. Jake launched into the presentation with technical jargon, statistics, and projections, striving to seize their attention. Yet, as he spoke, Claire's mind began to spin in anticipation of how the discussion might steer away from what truly mattered. Before Jake could dive too deeply into financial forecasts, Claire stood up. Clearing her throat, she felt the palpable shift in energy as all eyes focused on her. "I'd like to address why this project isn't just an expense or a line item on a budget sheet," she said, her voice resonating with purpose. There was a moment of hesitation before Jake nodded in silent approval, allowing her to take the lead. "This park will rejuvenate the community. It will provide a nurturing space for children, a gathering ground for families, and a place for everyone to reclaim their sense of belonging." Her voice warmed with emotion as she recounted the residents' visions, recalling the elderly woman's hope for a garden and the young mother's plea for safe play areas. As she spoke, Claire felt a surge of empowerment swelling inside her. She was not just supporting a project, she was advocating for her community. She could see the stakeholders starting to stir, some showing intrigue, while others appeared skeptical. Their faces flickered as she painted a vivid picture of community engagement leading to sustainable development, blending economic gain with heartfelt connections. When her impassioned speech concluded, silence filled the room, broken only by the soft hum of air conditioning. Claire's heart beat heavily in her chest. Had she done enough? Would they understand the gravity of her words? Jake stepped forward, breaking the moment of uncertainty. "To add to what Claire has pointed out, this isn't just about profit margins," he said, his voice steadying. "We're presenting a long-term investment. As the community flourishes, so too will their contributions to the local economy." The suggestion of partnership, bridging values and interests, seemed to resonate with some stakeholders. Encouraged, Claire took stock of their shifting reactions, noticing whispers of agreement rising from unexpected corners of the room. Yet, amidst this burgeoning connection, a looming figure among the stakeholders sat with arms crossed, skepticism etched into his features. Claire instantly recognized him as a key executive from the corporate board, notorious for his ruthless prioritization of short-term profits. His piercing stare felt like a gauntlet thrown, a direct challenge to their newfound cohesion. The time for direct confrontation was approaching. Claire realized that her voice, once timid, must now carry the weight of the community's aspirations against corporate inertia. The stakes had escalated beyond numbers. This was about authentic engagement. Amid the hard truths of corporate pressure. As the meeting unfolded further, she braced herself, ready to support Jake and herself against the looming simplicity of profit over purpose. The air thrummed with tension as the executive prepared to speak, and Claire sensed the pivotal moment was upon them. And in that moment of uncertainty, she resolved to tap into her deepest reservoir of conviction. Following the corporate dynamics was one path, but to forge her own was another. Claire would need to confront more than just fiscal realities. She would challenge the undercurrents of power itself. As the executive cleared his throat, readying his rebuttal, Claire felt the electric charge in the air. It was now or never. Their journey hinged on this moment. Would they have the courage to redefine the outcome? Would Claire find the strength to navigate this pivotal challenge against the tides of corporate tradition? The executive's voice cut through the thick tension like a knife. I fail to see how this park aligns with our bottom line. What guarantees can you offer that this investment won't just drain resources indefinitely? His challenge hung heavily in the atmosphere, like a storm cloud ready to unleash torrential rain. Claire's heart raced. The moment she had anticipated, even feared, had arrived. The response she would offer could either solidify their project's future or seal its fate. As he spoke, an unmistakable resolve coursed through her. This was her chance not just to defend a proposal, but to assert her place in the conversation, to articulate her vision with clarity and conviction. Profit is essential, but so is long-term viability, both for us and the community. Claire decided to speak, her voice gaining strength. This project is not merely a financial undertaking. It reflects a commitment to creating a sustainable environment that nurtures growth for everyone involved. These are not just numbers in a spreadsheet. They are real people, real potential. She saw some stakeholders lean forward, their attention sharpening as she continued. Investing in quality spaces inspires public engagement and fosters local economic activity. More families in our neighborhoods means more patrons for local businesses and increased revenue streams for the company. It's a cycle of growth. The executive squinted, his skepticism unwavering. Bold claims, Miss Claire. Anecdotes won't suffice when the investors prioritize quarterly reports. But something flickered inside Claire, something she hadn't realized. She possessed a sense of authority born from genuine commitment. Anecdotes, sir, become stories. Stories build community identity, and identity drives brand loyalty. Imagine if we could lead that transformation. Our company would be recognized not only as a player in the market, but as a pillar within the community. She felt Jake's supportive presence beside her, his confidence buoyed by her articulation. Yet Claire was acutely aware of the risks. Her commitment was about to be tested. The boardroom air chilled, cold and rehearsed, a stark contrast to her flaming conviction. Are you suggesting this project could become part of our marketing strategy? The executive countered, intrigued yet still guarded. What exactly does that entail? A flood of ideas spilled into her mind. We could integrate stories from community members into our promotional materials, showcasing our role in revitalizing the neighborhood. Collaborating with local influencers to portray positive transformations, engaging schools and environmental education programs at the park. These aren't just ideas, they're pathways for us to connect authentically. The boardroom shifted. The executive's brow furrowed deeper, revealing a momentary crack in his steely demeanor. Claire seized this glimpse of vulnerability, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and fear. She pressed on. The return wouldn't simply be measured in numbers. The value lies in our reputation and the loyalty of a community that feels heard, respected, and valued. As she spoke, her voice steadied, the growing conviction visible to even the most hardened stakeholders. Faced with her conviction, the tension in the room seemed to morph, as whispers of doubt transformed into murmurs of consideration. But just as Claire felt the tide shift in her favor, the executive's gaze remained unfaltering. Sentiment does not fill the coffers, Claire. If profitability cannot be assured, I fear this conversation is moot. She sensed the disbelief swirling in the air, an intricate dance of corporate pragmatism versus human empathy. Claire's gut twisted. This was the crux of the battle, a defining moment that tested her resolve. The path forward could not be forged solely through emotional appeals. It required a steadfast strategy grounded in accountability and results. Determined, Claire leaned into the pressure, mentally strategizing her next move. She knew she could dismantle the executive's bulletproof facade if she navigated the complexities with both heart and logic. Feeling the weight of her thoughts, she glanced at Jake, who offered an encouraging nod, igniting her courage once more. The stakes were high, but she realized this was not about the immediate outcome. It was about the journey and the authority she was allowing herself to claim. The next words would either capsize her mission or launch it to new possibilities. In that moment, she understood. Her growth hinged not just on eloquence, but on authenticity and the courage to reshape the narrative. Determined to make her mark, Claire took a breath, prepared to cement her vision in the unyielding realm of corporate reality. And then, just as she gathered her thoughts and braced for the next volley, a surprise announcement echoed through the room, reshaping the dynamics entirely. The battle had just escalated, and Claire would have to confront not only the scrutiny of the board but an unexpected twist that could alter everything she had worked for. Claire blinked, momentarily caught off guard by the unexpected proclamation reverberating through the room. The executive had just been interrupted by the arrival of a high-profile investor, Marcus Keene, well known for his outspoken ideas about sustainable development and community engagement. Claire's stomach twisted with nerves. His presence could either validate her mission or dig a deeper grave for her ambitions. "Apologies for the interruption, everyone," Marcus said, his voice calm but commanding. "I couldn't miss the chance to weigh in on a discussion that has been brewing in the industry. Modern investments must align with societal needs. Traditional metrics are not the only way to measure success." The board seemed split. Half of them leaned in with newfound interest, while others whispered among themselves skeptically. Claire repressed a surge of hope. This could pivot everything. She seized the moment, aiming to synchronize her ideas with Marcus's viewpoint, striving to weave her narrative into his. "Absolutely, Mr. Keene. The connection between sustainable projects and community investment can redefine profitability. We're not dismissing financial viability. We're just proposing a broader definition of what success could look like." Watching Marcus take a seat at the table, Claire absorbed the gravity of her situation. This was not merely a business proposition, it was a test of her ability to adapt, a chance to uncover her own depths. She couldn't just rely on gut feelings or loose connections. Her ideas had to resonate with numbers, data, and strategic outcomes in a way that persuaded even the most hardened critics. "Miss Claire," the executive interrupted her thoughts, his voice steely. "If you truly believe that these concepts can redefine profitability, what concrete steps would you take to ensure accountability? How can we be sure this transformation isn't merely a facade?" A flicker of uncertainty sparked within her as she glanced around the room. She needed to offer more than just passion, she needed a clear strategy. Taking a deep breath, she leaned into the moment. "I propose to establish a series of KPIs, key performance indicators, that track the community's engagement and tangible economic impacts. We could compile data from local businesses to measure growth in patronage, document participation in park events, and observe shifts in public sentiment through surveys over time. Glimmers of interest began to emerge amongst the once skeptical stakeholders, and Claire felt the tension between fear and empowerment manifest once more. This was a defining moment, and the challenge invigorated her. With every word, she was not merely defending a project. She was articulating a vision that could catalyze her professional evolution. As the executives exchanged glances, Claire decided to lean further into the analytical side of her proposal. We could commit to a reporting period, perhaps quarterly, where we transparently share our findings with the board and the community. An open forum for discussion could build trust and reinforce our credibility. The executives seemed to ponder her suggestions, the tension in the air thrumming like a plucked string. Claire knew she needed to interrupt the mounting pressure gathering behind the executive's eyes. His impatience was palpable, but so too was his curiosity. She sensed he was intrigued. She held on to that flicker. Investing in our communities is investing in our own future. If we fail to tap into the potential of social investment, we risk becoming obsolete, she declared, her voice gaining gravity. I believe this park can symbolize that shift. Just as she felt the tide turning, Marcus spoke up. Merging community needs with corporate strategy is a delicate balance, but Claire's plan resonates. If executed with integrity, it has the potential to chart a meaningful path for us all. Their gazes locked, and salesmanship swirled into belief. Claire was on the brink of validation. This was more than just defending a project, it was the burgeoning evolution of her confidence and competence, encapsulating her journey in real time. As the discussion intensified and debate lingered in the air, Claire felt something change within her. She was no longer an underdog. She was a contender, prepared to face myriad challenges ahead. But just as the atmosphere began to pulse with collaborative energy, an executive's phone buzzed loudly and disrupted the dialogue, drawing all attention toward him. "Pardon," he said, reading the message that had flashed across his screen. His expression darkened, transforming the once promising vibe from anticipation to discord. "It seems we have an even bigger issue at play. Everyone brace yourselves. It's going to get much more complicated than we thought." Claire's heart sank as she realized the storm was far from over, but the flicker of determination within her flared brighter, revealing the true challenge ahead. Claire's heart raced as the atmosphere shifted abruptly. The executive's ominous tone sent ripples of anxiety throughout the room, and Claire felt the weight of her ambitions bear down on her. She had come so far to get to this moment, only to see the potential fracture before her eyes. "What's the issue?" she pressed, trying to steer the conversation back to a constructive path. The executive looked up, his face a mixture of frustration and urgency. "There has been a significant backlash regarding our recent project approvals," he said, his voice low but heavy. "Community groups are protesting, citing lack of transparency in our decision-making process. The press has picked up on this as well. They want to see accountability, and they're questioning our commitments to sustainability." This wasn't just a hurdle, it was a crisis. Claire's mind raced as she considered the ramifications. She stood on a precipice. She had spent years constructing her persona as a capable, innovative leader, and now it was in jeopardy. The prospect of losing everything she had worked for instilled both fear and an unswerving resolve. "Maybe this could be an opportunity," Claire said, with a tentative yet bold tone. The room fell silent, all eyes now glued to her. "If the community feels unheard, we must address that head-on. Instead of retreating, we can enhance transparency and engage those stakeholders directly. We can host an open forum, a town hall where stakeholders can voice their concerns and understand our plans better." The executive regarded her with a mixture of skepticism and intrigue. A ripple of hope surfaced within her. She needed a viable strategy to counteract the negativity now threatening her vision. "We can even leverage social media to highlight our commitment and reach out to those community members," she continued, her pulse quickening with the excitement of newfound possibilities. "We can show them that we're not just investors, but truly invested in the community's well-being. Let's demonstrate the measurable impacts of our projects so they can see our intentions clearly." As she spoke, Claire felt a shift within herself, a burgeoning certainty that she had the capability to rally. Each suggestion birthed confidence, solidifying her role as a transformational leader. She could turn discontent into dialogue. "That takes resources, Claire," another board member interjected. "Do we have the budget for such actions? These forums could be costly and time-consuming." Claire considered this challenge carefully. "What we invest in communication and transparency now could save us future costs related to diminished reputation or further backlash. We can find ways to reduce expenses elsewhere or seek additional funding to support this initiative. Our goal is to build relationships, not just projects." The board murmured among themselves, their initial skepticism slowly thawing. What had initially felt like a suffocating environment now buzzed with an undercurrent of possibility. Claire felt her footing solidify, each successive thought more strategic than the last. "I propose we initiate a task force," Claire offered, her voice echoing with a newfound authority. "A diverse team that reflects our stakeholders could work closely with the community to craft our messaging and facilitate ongoing dialogue. Let's demonstrate our dedication to community values, integrating them with our professional goals." Marcus's approving nod did not go unnoticed. It only amplified her momentum. This wasn't just about salvaging a project. It was about redefining leadership in a complex landscape. With her ideas crystallizing, she felt the horizon of her career shift. But with each step toward resolution, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that the backlash was just a symptom of a deeper issue. Intuition nudged at her, whispering that this wouldn't simply blow over. As the meeting progressed, she remained acutely aware of the ticking clock, an unrelenting reminder of the pressure mounting around her. Could she really transform this challenge into an opportunity? The doubt lingered, but so did a renewed sense of agency. With the executive's attention diverted, Claire quietly vowed to dig deeper. If the heart of the storm lay buried beneath layers of corporate politics and community discontent, she'd unearth it. The conversation began to wane, but Claire felt a new thread of determination woven into the fabric of her resolve. She wouldn't just survive this crisis. She would emerge from it transformed. Yet, as clarity enveloped her plans, another executive announced, "We'll have to respond quickly tomorrow morning as press briefing will address these concerns. Bring your best ideas." Claire's pulse quickened again. The gravity of it all loomed heavier, pushing her deeper into the eye of the storm, a storm she would need to navigate effectively if she hoped to turn the tides in her favor. But somewhere in the back of her mind, an unsettling question lingered. What if the community's discontent ran deeper than she realized? Would her newfound momentum hold when faced with their true grievances? Claire's nerves were frayed, yet they buzzed with a strange kind of energy as she left the boardroom. The stakes had just escalated exponentially, and she knew the press conference looming tomorrow would be the moment where all her words would either fuse into a compelling narrative or disintegrate under scrutiny. In the quiet of her office, she paced like a caged animal, her wheels turning. How could she genuinely connect with the community when her own organization had caused them distress? Her instincts pressed her to look beyond the immediate concerns and to the heart of the issue. Beyond backlash and headlines, there were real individuals whose lives were impacted by decisions that felt abstract from the corporate suites. Claire stopped mid-stride, a realization piercing through the frantic fog. Empathy was her strongest tool. But how could she translate that into a concrete plan? Taking a seat at her desk, she began scribbling ideas, yanking her focus back to the task at hand. She thought back to her childhood, how her mother would volunteer at the local shelter, teaching her the value of compassionate engagement. That principle had nurtured her throughout her career. After knocking out a few notes, based on an open forum format, Claire felt the initial outlines of a strategy shaping up. She needed to reach out to community leaders one-on-one to articulate their concerns fully rather than letting a sterile press briefing dictate their narrative. Individual stories could transform her projections into a broader spectrum of understanding. Her first step was to draft emails to the community groups, inviting them for informal discussions, away from the formalities of corporate suits and stiff pleasantries. Would they be willing to share their stories? Would they trust her enough to let her into their world? Questions loomed heavily, each one laced with doubt, but she persevered. As she typed, Claire felt her pulse steady. She wasn't running from the storm anymore. Instead, she was preparing to contend with it. She was ready to listen, to validate feelings that corporate directives had dismissed for too long. This was new territory for her, but somewhere beneath the intention was a growing conviction that authenticity would set her apart. However, deeper anxieties wrangled within her. The corporate framework had the potential to swallow her empathy whole when pitted against profit margins and shareholder interests. How could she ensure that genuine conversations wouldn't turn into calculated strategy sessions cloaked in compassion? Stepping back from her desk, Claire took a breath, the question crystallizing: was she prepared to become an instrument of change, even if it meant risking the legal and financial implications of the organization's decisions? Her own internal conflict danced a fine line between her ambition and an almost instinctive knowledge that to care might be perceived as weakness. The urgency built again. Tomorrow's press briefing loomed large, but she couldn't let that pressure drown her instincts. She grabbed her phone and dialed Marcus, her ally, her confidant. As the call connected, she could sense his curiosity. "Claire, what's going on?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern. "I have a plan," Claire replied, her voice steady but tinged with the weight of uncertainty. "It's different from what we've ever done. I need your support to pitch this tomorrow during the briefing." As she laid out her thoughts, she felt a surge of determination intertwining with fear. However, the brief moment of vulnerability also revealed a significant breakthrough. She was no longer just a cog in the corporate machine. She was stepping into her role as a bridge, carving out a path from boardroom to community. But with every ounce of resolve, doubt crept in. Could she genuinely affect change amid entrenched bureaucracies? Would the board stand behind her as she wandered into this unfamiliar territory? Would Marcus assure her once again of their shared vision? As they continued to discuss her proposal, the clock crept closer to the inevitable moment when she would need to make her ideas heard. Amidst the steady resolution building within her, an unsettling thought flickered. What would be the true measure of her success if she did open those doors? With tomorrow closing in, she finished the call. The atmosphere around her felt charged, as if the world was holding its breath alongside her. Could change truly begin with one empathetic conversation? The hour was late, yet sleep wouldn't find her. Instead, her focus turned inward. A conflict blossoming. Was she ready to rebuke the comfort of the status quo? And if the backlash did prove symptomatic of deeper communal grievances, how far would she go to unearth those truths, and could she bear the answers hidden as they were? As Claire sat in the quiet desk light, she contemplated the looming press conference, her mind racing. The real storm was just beginning. Claire stood in front of the mirror, a wave of determination washing over her as she prepared for the press briefing. The uncertainty that had once knotted her stomach began to unravel. She was no longer an outsider in her own community or in the corporate structure. She had stepped into her newfound role with authority born from resilience and an unwavering commitment to effect positive change. In the hours leading up to the meeting, she focused inward, reflecting on how far she had come. The timid woman who once felt like an imposter beneath the glare of her corporate peers had grown into a confident advocate, ready to articulate not just her vision, but the collective voices of her community. Every sleepless night had prepared her for today's fight, not just to defend the park, but to redefine the very concept of profit for her organization. As she entered the conference room, the atmosphere buzzed with a mix of anticipation and skepticism. Corporate stakeholders filled the seats, some still skeptical, but she noticed a subtle shift in their demeanor after the recent events. They were more receptive, perhaps understanding that it was time to embrace new narratives that intertwine community value with corporate aspirations. Claire took a deep breath before speaking. "Thank you for gathering today," she began, her voice steady. "I stand before you not only as a representative of this organization, but as a resident of our community, a mother, and an advocate for meaningful change." Her words resonated with authenticity, striking a chord with the audience. She started with her plan, emphasizing the importance of transparency and community engagement. "We've identified the disconnect that led to the backlash surrounding our park project, and it's imperative we address it head-on. I propose establishing ongoing dialogues that prioritize community feedback as we progress," she asserted. To her relief and growing confidence, she could see the stakeholders nodding, absorbing her words. She leaned into the momentum, presenting data and concrete steps, framed with captivating stories from community members she had personally engaged. Each statistic vindicated her stance. A clear correlation between community well-being and economic growth was emerging, one they could all understand. Imagine a community that feels valued, where local businesses thrive because families are gathering in a revitalized park. This isn't just idealism. It makes sound business sense, she highlighted, her passion igniting a flicker of enthusiasm in the room. Those who had once doubted her were beginning to connect emotionally with the proposal, and at the same time, lean into the business metrics previously deemed essential. But then, as she ventured deeper into the details of her plan, the same skeptical executive who had first thrown down the gauntlet raised his hand. "What assurance do you have that this community engagement will result in tangible financial returns?" "We cannot gamble on sentiment alone," he pressed, his tone patronizing. Claire felt a surge of adrenaline. She had anticipated this pushback and was ready. "Emotions translate into actions," she replied. "I propose KPIs to measure community engagement alongside our profit margins. By committing resources to community-driven initiatives, we create a cycle where investment begets trust, and trust leads to sustainable profits born from both loyalty and local engagement." As she finished her statement, Claire felt an unfamiliar sense of calm envelop her. She was no longer seeking validation. She was asserting her competence and demonstrating that their intertwined paths could redefine success and foster lasting change. The air in the room shifted dramatically. What had once been contention now oscillated toward collaboration. Marcus leaned in from the side, his approving gaze meets hers. "I support this," he said, providing the rescue she did not realize she craved. "Investing in community is investing in the future of our business." The murmurs of agreement swelled around the room, forming a chorus of support. The executive who had been most resistant took a moment before responding. "Let us see how we can align our operations to support these proposals. If Claire can substantiate community engagement with real results, then I believe this is something we can pursue." Then came the moment of reckoning, the moment she had long prepared for. Claire stood at the precipice of transformation, her heart racing yet steady, her voice resounding with fortitude. She laid out her next steps, inviting stakeholders and community members to forge partnerships that would represent a united front. With the meeting concluding on a note of optimism, Claire felt a sense of true achievement envelop her. They had not only salvaged a project, but had redefined its essence. She had demonstrated her capacity not merely as an employee, but as a leader willing to fight for her community, showing that empathy does not detract from professionalism, but enhances it. In the following days, Claire coordinated the town hall meetings, feeling the collective sigh of relief from the residents, as their voices finally found a platform where they could be heard. She embraced the energy of collaboration, drawing stories from individuals and creating proposals infused with their aspirations and experiences. As a wave of constructive dialogue flowed through the community, Claire became not just a spokesperson, but a catalyst for change. The park morphed into a symbol of dedication, a bridge between two worlds, the corporate and the familiar, both embracing a common goal, nurturing growth and prosperity. This journey had transformed her from a lonely single mother into a confident leader who crafted spaces of engagement not only for her daughter, but for countless families. Her role expanded, and she welcomed the challenges ahead with open arms. This was her achievement, her legacy, rooted in resilience, advocacy, and the promise of a future where community and industry could flourish together. As she looked out over the park during its ribbon-cutting ceremony, Claire's heart swelled with gratitude. She had come not only to preserve a cherished space, but had forged a new path for others to follow, capturing the true essence of empowerment. She had achieved not just the retention of a park, but had conquered the weight of self-doubt, embracing her voice, her worth, and the unyielding belief that anyone could rise to greatness through authenticity. The culmination of her journey rested not just in the tangible success of the park, but in her unwavering commitment to redefine what it meant to lead with heart and purpose. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.